Hello friends, this is going to be a short video on how we do the format for the K through 2 and the 3rd through 5th grade lessons at the Oaks. When you walk in through the K through 2 classroom, this is where you'll see the gray cart to the left of the teacher chairs and the board where we teach lessons at in front of the carpet. In this bucket, you will find the materials that you'll need to do your lesson. There will be 2 copies of the lesson plan, copies of the craft, as well as 2 copies of the Gospel Story Bible, which is where our stories of the week are located. This cart is for teachers only. You also have a few copies of your ESV Bible and just some general supplies that you might need as a teacher during your lesson. I pulled a few of the things so that we could take a closer look. If you're teaching in the K through 2 classroom, your lessons look very similar through 3rd through 5th grade, but there are some small changes. The lesson format stays the same 3 out of 4 weeks during the month, and on Memory Verse Sunday, there are some slight changes. So this is what a Memory Verse Sunday format looks like. On these lesson plans, first you see your before service, which the most important things are to how to turn on the Bluetooth speaker and connect it to your phone so that you can play the playlist that I will send you via text the night before you serve, as well as choosing a center activity. The center activities are on the white bookcase. You as a teacher can choose which ones you want to be set out at the tables. There's 1 center per table. The students do not get to go get them themselves. You as a teacher get to choose them. So you will set those out before the kids arrive, and then once they arrive, they can listen to the worship music and work on the center that is at their table. At 10 o'clock, we do cleanup. They have 5 minutes to get their center cleaned up and returned to its spot. What I found best is to choose 1 student from each table to walk it over rather than let multiple of them, because then it gets crowded and kind of crazy. So we get the centers cleaned up and off the floor and back to where they belong. Once they're cleaned up, then on Memory Verse Sunday, we come to the carpet about 10 o'clock, 10:05. We run through the memory verse several times, I would say at least 3 to 4, so they're feeling confident going into the sanctuary. The memory verse we practice 2 different ways. One is a choral read, which is where they all read it together along with the teacher, and the other is an echo read, where the teacher will read a line and the students will repeat it back to them. The memory verse is up on the brown craft paper. When we have weeks that is not the Memory Verse Sunday, they are adding in some of the missing words, but now that it is Memory Verse Sunday, all of them should be up there and ready to go for them to take to the sanctuary with them. After we've had time to practice, it'll be time to go to the sanctuary. Either myself or Allie will come back to the classroom when it is time. We always line up and start to walk down when the 4th song has begun so that we are ready to go and enter the sanctuary during the greeting time. Typically, we have a message with Pastor Matt afterwards, but due to Easter, we will not be having that this time. So we'll do our memory verse and then exit the sanctuary and come back to the classroom. At this point, this is where they will split. K through 2 will stay in the main classroom, and 3rd through 5th graders will go into their room on the other side of the partition. So this is when we get into our Bible story. Both classrooms use the same book, the Gospel Story Bible. I always recommend starting with this. This follows the Gospels and tells the story in a very child-friendly way and does include questions. So for instance, this week, with it being Easter, is the resurrection. So there's the story, and there are some questions on this page that you can use to talk about it. After you have read that together, in the lesson, there's always the scripture reference. So you can pull out the ESV Bible and go over that with the students. If you're in the K through 2 classroom, I recommend reading that out loud to the kids, letting them ask questions as you read it to them. If you're in the 3rd through 5th grade classroom, I recommend passing out the ESV Bibles and letting them look up the scripture while either they read it out loud for you or you read it together. And then there are discussion questions. Sometimes they are the same as 3rd through 5th grade. Sometimes they are simpler. You as a teacher are able to dig deeper or keep it right where these are at. That is up to you. Now, there was a change to this lesson. If there's ever a change that is after we've printed everything, I will make sure to verbalize that with you, either in person Sunday morning or via text on Saturday, sometimes both. And this week, the change is that since there's no longer a children's message with Pastor Matt, there might be time for a craft. So after the Bible story, they would go back to their seats for the craft. In the material box, you will find an example with some basic directions, and the two materials. They will all need their boulder and they will all need their coloring sheet. If there's lots of time, they could do both pieces where they color the coloring sheet and the boulder, and then they attach the two together with a brad. If there's not enough time, you could just pass out the one coloring sheet, and that would be enough for them to do to fill some time. Or if time is really tight, don't do it at all. That is your decision as a teacher for how they're doing, how much time you have, and how your comfort level with that. Then finally, we have prayer. Typically, this is how we start our time together after the centers, but Memory Verse Sunday, it's how we end. So the students will come back to the carpet. They will share their prayer requests, and we'll model praying with them. We have been trying to record those prayer requests so that we make sure that we are verbalizing them in prayer together as a group. And then we end it with praying the Lord's Prayer together. That is on the door in this classroom. So if they don't have it memorized and they want a spot to look when they do it, that is a good place for them to look. And then finally is dismissal. So dismissal for both groups is done out of the main door. There is a white binder on the top of that bookcase that has sheets for collecting the children's stickers. You need one sticker from the child and one sticker from the adult that is picking them up. They need to have turned in both stickers to leave the classroom. And one thing that we've been really working on is taking our time, making sure the kids are staying in their seats and in their correct classroom until they are called to be dismissed. We have lots of friends who get very excited to see their parents, and so they want to run up to the front, and we've been slowing down, making sure they go back to sit down, and then continuing on. It does make it go a little slower right now, but I think that as we get more practice with it, it's going to move much more smoothly. So I recommend having two adults working the door, one collecting stickers and one calling for the children to come to the door when their adult arrives. And that is it. That is what a Memory Verse Sunday lesson looks like. The 3rd through 5th grade looks very similar as well. Really, the only difference for 3rd through 5th grade is their follow-up activity after the Bible story is a little different. And they also have sometimes different questions that dig a little bit deeper that are more age appropriate for them. But we're going to dig into theirs for just a second before we end this video. Okay, and now in the 3rd through 5th grade classroom, I did move the bookcase location to the left side of the board, but the things on it are still the same. On top of it, you will find a material bucket, the Gospel Story Bibles, Old Story New, which is what contains the discussion questions, as well as some copies of the ESV Bible. Since this is 3rd through 5th grade and they may want to look up the verses themselves to follow along, there are multiple copies for them to borrow from over there, as well as all of the materials that they will share in here. On the bottom, eventually we will be introducing some games as follow-up activities, but not quite yet. So this week, the lessons all look the same with the exception of the follow-up activity after the Bible story. Since we don't have the children's message, there might be time for this. So for 3rd through 5th grade, I would recommend giving them a choice and letting them work in small groups. The first choice is to take a blank sheet of paper, to tape out a cross with painter's tape and then kind of color around it. And then they can cut out one of the "it is finished" and tape it to the bottom or glue it to the bottom. The other option is to do a cross. I'm thankful for Jesus, and they can put things that they are thankful for inside the cross. The kids have some experience with the cross. Last week they made a giant cross that they worked together as a group with, but it would be nice for them to have their own as well. If they want to leave it, we can hang it on the wall, or they can take it home with them as well. But those would be options that I would recommend in both groups. Getting them into small groups as much as possible, 3 or 4 or 5 kids. It helps them to connect and helps with behavior as well. So these are their options in 3rd through 5th grade this week, if there is time for the craft after the Bible story before prayer and dismissal. And I think that is it for generally how lessons run on Memory Verse Sundays. I'll do one for a non-Memory Verse Sunday on a different week, but they all have the same components, just in a different order. And that is it.